I'm Will Hedrick.
And I'm Jordan Schaffer.
And this is Dog Ears and Timestamps, a book club podcast.
And the end of The Witchers. The Witcher cast.
This will be the last episode. We're not recording the show episode first because we're waiting to do that second. And this will come out on Wednesday. So this is the end of Witchercast.
Yeah. This morning I was kind of like, cool, done like with The Witcher, and I'm glad we spent a good amount of time on it. Mm-hmm. I just felt like, nice, we did it. Nice. And then also I just felt like some of the, I don't know, I guess since we gave it a couple books, I was like, we're good, and then today as I was like, listening and getting more into it, because like I started off kind of like, all right, I'm glad to be done. So I wasn't even the most like eager to hop into reading.
Oh yeah.
And so, but when I was reading, and then honestly, once we got to all the deep, really cool, I guess deep is the wrong word, but like the really descriptive Cirilla sections, like that was a lot of fun with a character that I knew I'd like, and I always liked her. I just
right.
I guess this is like her on her own. One of the first times that we're really getting to see a lot of her on her own. Maybe is more what it is, because she was obviously on her own before. But so that, I don't know, that was really cool, and I liked her. And it's kind of touching on the whole like apprentice thing, and like going to like magic school, and like the training things that I like. It kind of touches on that, because she is like an apprentice witch and an apprentice witcher, so she has like both of those little tools on her tool belt, and
right.
it's I don't know, it was fun kind of watching her go through things, especially with like the unicorn and all that fun stuff. And and as I was listening today, I was like, man, I'm sad about it. And then rewatching the final episode for the show again, I was like, damn, that was good. We'll have a lot to say about that when everybody's already heard what we have to say about it, so I don't need to dive into it. But it's just I didn't get the same necessarily like end of an era, sad, like all my friends are gone kind of feeling. But I got kind of excited, like, okay, now I have to dive into this project on my own, see what Will and I are going to decide to do for it later.
Take it at your own pace for it now, as opposed to in either direction having to catch up because it's the day, it's Sunday, or having to wait because it's Thursday. Like,
right.
If you want to sit down and read, 10 chapters one day, you can just do it now.
and it might be fun even later on when maybe both of us have played the game a little bit to, because, the storyline for the game, I guess I don't know necessarily because I haven't read more of the books, but I don't think that they dive into it really much for the story as of the 5 books.
Yeah, 1 and 2. So they take place after the saga.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
1 and 2 are a little bit more about Geralt and going, through some additional storylines, in the greater world. Cirilla doesn't exist until the 3rd game, which is strange.
Okay. Yeah.
And then suddenly becomes extremely pivotal. And so it's strange that they went in that direction with it, but that could have been out of necessity.
Yeah.
For various reasons. Whenever you're creating a new, not a new IP, but a new, game series or whatever, you don't always. Certainly for that's going to be based off of a book series that's not extremely popular,
right.
as of that time. Back in 2006, I think was when the first one came out.
Yeah.
Then, man. And you yourself are not an extremely popular developer, and you're a foreign developer, where the main games market is in America. I would imagine that you wouldn't then be like, all right, we're going to have this tie in hard to the story.
Well, when
you would kind of need it to be able to stand on its own, and you could say this takes place after the saga, but has got, relatively speaking, not a whole lot to do with the saga, so that people could, experience it and not be like, man, I guess I need to read these books before I experience that. I feel
like that'd be if someone like tried to pitch the Wheel of Time series or something like to a movie director and was like, hey, let's do this as a series for Netflix, and then. Or as a game, sorry, just skip the whole show part and go straight to game, because that's the part that was even more kind of like, wait, what? Because as you were saying that, I never thought about them pitching a book series from. It could have been in their own country.
I think it had a Polish TV series.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, that so maybe that made it a
but
little easier.
But it would have been low budget Polish. Yeah, it's. I guess being able to then do the game they would probably be a little bit more confident about it having some sort of success in Poland.
At least, yeah.
Where the books are extremely popular and have always been since they were published in the late 80s.
Yeah, but yeah, that'd be like, so, I mean, we all know of the Wheel of Time series. Maybe not all, but we know of the,
at the very least, you and I very likely heard of the name in passing.
And whether you know about the characters or not, like, I feel like pitching straight from skipping the series or the movie or whatever, going straight to a game would be such a hard pitch. I mean, maybe not for The Witcher, since it's like it's got a cool concept in it of itself, a very strong, very cool guy with his own set of moral code. It exists
in a setting that is very
Monster Hunt.
It exists in video games to, almost a trivial level. Yeah.
And the game Monster Hunter came out kind of around like the boom of this one, I would think, right? Like Witcher 3 and Monster Hunter kind of
off the top of my head when the first Monster Hunter came out. I would assume that the first Monster Hunter came out probably like in 2000. Just 2000.
Okay, so yeah, maybe way earlier than I was thinking then, obviously. Well, I mean, maybe I wonder if I'm thinking of a different game. What was that game that everyone was there a new Monster Hunter that everyone was kind of...
Monster Hunter Worlds came out about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago at this point. They're about to come out with another expansion. Actually, I think the expansion has already dropped, but it's on consoles and not PC yet, so I haven't played it. But Monster Hunter Worlds is great, and Monster Hunter has long been extremely popular. But that... it's way older than I was even guessing. It goes back to PlayStation 2.
Oh, cool.
The first Monster Hunter... Or maybe it's not older than I was thinking. I don't know time anymore. Getting old is the worst. The original Monster Hunter came out on PlayStation 2 on March 11th, 2004.
Cool. No, that was a good guess. You were right there.
In Japan.
I was thinking GameCube as I said it, or sorry, Wii as I said it, like after kind of realizing...
Well, there was a Monster Hunter game on the Wii.
That was the only one that I remember like coming out, and then this new one that,
I think that was Monster Hunter Generations.
I think so. But... I think you're right. But anyway, that's a translatable concept for a game. So I feel like the pitch for the Witcher game might have been a little easier than the Wheel of Time necessarily, as like a, hey, we're gonna make the new Skyrim, but in this universe. I don't know, because that's kind of the feel I get from that game, because it's kind of or that book is that it's sort of a D&D-esque, they literally have games. The first role-playing game I played, tabletop role-playing game, was the Wheel of Time series based. And it was a Wheel of Time game based with D&D rules, and so I've always thought of those two universes kind of living side by side, whether they do or don't. But I don't know. I feel like maybe that might be a harder pitch for a game, but it's just crazy to think of. I'm thinking of how I would do it, and I would probably want to pitch a show before a game. I don't know why, just to get maybe more people.
Traditionally speaking, that's the path.
But games are so popular now. I mean, it's not like The Witcher obviously did anything wrong. They're getting, like, the game's getting more sales now after the show. The show is getting so many watches because of the game.
Games were nearly as popular back in the 2000s as they are, in the early aughts as they are now.
I was just thinking now. But you're right. Pitching back then is what I was saying. And
I think what it is that it wasn't like somebody outside had an idea and was like, oh, what if we made this book series into a game? They were game developers that were already in a company that they ran and were like, we love this game. Let's make a this book. Let's make a game about this thing that we love already.
That'd be cool.
Because all the developers are huge I mean, I guess the majority of Poland that was, young adult at the time that these books were coming out have basically all read them. Yeah. It's extremely popular again.
That's so cool.
And so it's more of, we're already fans of this property and we can make games. Let's make a game of this property that we're fans of.
That's awesome. That makes me feel like a group of, like, just the gang, the group got together and was like, they had their own really huge following of this game. Like, I can't even imagine what of the book series. I'm trying to think of in our world with our friends, like what that would be, and I can't even come up with one. But like, just an inner, like, just it's, to me, I'm imagining like all these like nerds basically getting together and just like, dude, have you read this book yet? And then they all start reading it together and like, oh, we love that, and then they pass it around. And I guess Aragon maybe, but now that yeah, because that one was just it did that one movie, but that was, I think, a book series that all of us kind of passed around, sort of like, hey, have you read this one yet? Like, check this one out. And that one hasn't got the acclaim that I feel like maybe it deserves or deserved. But that's maybe that's what it's making me think of like our group of friends with our little secret book that we would like to make blow up because we loved the series so much. Like, let's make a cool Aragon game, you know? So that's probably exactly what happened. Now that you say that, like, I'd love to get in be the fly on the wall or whatever, like kind of hear the backstory of that. I don't know why I'm so into backstories like that. That's
always
the
interesting.
Birth of those kinds of things. Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, what a nice. Yeah, I don't want The Witcher to end now. Was the whole point of starting.
Right.
Now I'm in. So
yeah, I'm excited to continue reading it. I already bought the next one. I think is something fire.
Baptism
of Fire. Or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
I already went ahead and bought it whenever I finished, Time of Contempt, because when you get to the end of the Kindle book, it's like, this is the next book in the series. You want to go ahead and get it? And I was like, yeah.
It might be fun for us, maybe when I get into the game, or maybe when you get back into the game, and if we're both kind of playing through it, it might be fun for us months down the road to kind of just do like a full Witcher recap, like not necessarily go through the whole series.
Just talk about the franchise,
like
just a single episode of like, this is.
Hey, we finished the series. Yeah. Here's some of our favorite parts. Like, definitely go check out,
right, yeah,
the game and this and that, and just like, I guess if we had to do a big Game of Thrones recap, it might be kind of fun to just. I'm sure we might want to do if the next book ever does come out.
Yeah,
man, that'll be a good one. You think? You think? Oh man, I can't remember his name. Andrzej
Sapkowski.
Do you think he'll write another book, or is it?
He's written several other books.
I'm sorry, another for the Witcher.
Oh, another Witcher one. He did write another prequel one.
Oh, okay. I didn't think about that.
That takes place sometime between Sword of Destiny and Last Wish. I think is what I remember reading.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just a single story as opposed to like anthology, like the other two prequels. Or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the description was, but there is another prequel that has been written since completing the saga.
Okay.
I don't really remember all too much about it. I don't think that he would continue on with it.
Yeah. Those ones written after the sagas are completed are always kind of interesting. You're like, is the author doing a money grab? Are they like, what's happening? Like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm questioning his authorial, and that's not the right word, but his integrity as an author. But Stephen King, for example, in the Dark Tower series, I think one of the books he wrote was after the series was over. But I think it's probably just because he wanted to revisit some of the characters. Like, I doubt he was doing it for a money grab. Stephen King, like, I doubt he was doing it. But I feel like it was maybe a fan-serving kind of novel, like a little bit just more backstory and lore about the characters we love, not giving you new story beats, but kind of like a
just filling in some of the spaces
for books, And I don't know, I it would be interesting, I guess. I would like to check that one out, I guess, is kind of what I was getting at. That would be interesting. Like the ones after the series are done, I will check that out too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to just continue, and I'm really excited to get back to the game.
Yes,
the third game, because I'm not going to play the first or second. They're just I don't have the time to go through those games and then go through The Witcher 3 on top of other games that I like to play and am anticipating releasing in the next year. But two, The Witcher 1 is just so outdated. I think I've probably mentioned this every single time that we've mentioned it. It's just outdated mechanically and very difficult to play these days. The Witcher 2 is much better, but 3 is just so fucking good that I feel like, why would I play another game when I could play this one?
Oh yeah, and I mean, I feel like I don't know when the DLC came out, but I got all the DLC for it.
Like the GOTY edition with all the
yeah. Well, I don't know if I have that one.
Well, that's just what they call it.
Okay, then I do.
And certainly with digital versions of games now, they don't always call them GOTY editions anymore, just because. You know, they would almost rather just call it like a bundle.
Yeah.
And be like, yeah, get The Witcher and all of its available content.
I wish I could have just clicked the easy bundle buy button, but I just, I went and clicked each one. And I was like, I'm making sure I'm buying all of them. I did not want to miss out on the 20 plus hours of extra gameplay. It's like, oh my God.
Blood and Wine, the main big expansion. There were like 2 main expansions for Witcher 3.
Is that the Jesus arc? Blood and Wine? I'm just kidding.
and a couple of other like smaller things that were just kind of like just pieces.
Okay.
But Blood and Wine got a ton of acclaim. People said that Blood and Wine would be good enough on its own.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, good thing I got it. I don't know what the other DLC I got was. It was the 2 games and then some like.
There's a couple of other small things.
Yeah.
I think it was there was there's 2 that are like expansions in the classical sense, or in the way that we would consider an expansion. And that's Blood and Wine, and the other one that I can't remember. Well, and then there are a couple of other smaller, just kind of like. I can't remember what it is. Like there's a new dungeon or something like that.
Well, no, that is super helpful actually for me because I didn't know. I bought both of them thinking that it wouldn't let me buy one if I already had it included in the other. Like some bundles, they'll have you do. If you buy bundle 2, you'll get one along with it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But these 2, after you saying that, I was like, okay, I did buy everything I needed to get so that I had all of the content.
You get it on Xbox?
Yeah, I got it on Xbox. So, but yeah, I think that'll. I'm eager to get into it, especially because I mean, I think we don't know much about what's going on in that. It'll be like all kind of new content for me, sort of, right? Like I don't know if they necessarily touch it in the books, but we haven't gotten there yet.
No,
I guess,
well, it takes place long after the saga.
But are they in
I'm
similar
not sure
areas?
How long after the saga? Yeah, it's all in the same general space.
Okay, but
I don't think that anybody that we really know ever goes like over the sea or anything like that.
Okay.
But it is after. I don't know how long after because I don't know how far in time the saga gets to. Because we've now only read 2 books. It might. Between books 3 and 4, there might be a 10-year time skip because narratively that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But the third game series an adult. Okay. So spoiler alert, but we're done with the series as far as the show is concerned. So I'm just going to say that for the sake of conversation flowing. So like series an adult in the third game, or at the very least, she's maybe she's like 20. She's not like maturity, suddenly 50 or something like that, but she's like 20. She's like a capable adult woman who can do things and has agency and all that sort of thing.
And I imagine she either has the slowing age from Witcher school or witch school. I don't know
what her status is as far as like what skill sets she ended up fleshing out. You play as her a couple of times when you're trying to kind of piece the story of Witcher 3 is shown through 2 points of view, through Geralt's point of view and Ciri's point of view.
Okay.
And you jump back and forth between them here and there because Geralt is like always just trying to find Ciri for some reason. I don't know how they got separated.
They need phones.
And then, I know, right? Just get his fucking cell phone, Geralt.
Or those worms that were in the show. Sorry, we're not talking about the show. No.
And then Ciri is running away from the Wild Hunt. And so I don't really, but you don't, the only time that you ever spend with Ciri is whenever you find another clue to where she has gone as Geralt, and you just jump into like a memory sequence where you play as Ciri going through the place that you have just gone through or whatever. And so there, as far as I've gotten, which is about 30 hours into the game, I don't really know what it is that's going on with Ciri. I just know that she's running from the Wild Hunt and Geralt's trying to find her. So I don't know if she's gone full Witcher or has really developed her sorcery or anything like that. Although, to my memory, she doesn't do anything magical in the game.
Okay.
Through the points that I've played, which might be a result of what happens at the end of the section that we read, where she can't do magic anymore either.
Right.
And she thinks it's because she dabbled in fire magic, which is some sort of forbidden art, apparently.
Yeah, and as like it kind of came up that like she was never supposed to play with fire in that sense, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes sense just in some of the other lores that maybe not talked about in the show, but that I've seen and we've seen.
It comes up in the show, in the Netflix series.
I completely forgot about that. I was thinking like an Avatar, but yeah, go on.
Well, it comes up in the Netflix series, and we may or may not broach that topic. But there's whenever what's her name, the one who goes to Nilfgaard, whenever the mages are all having accounts about what do we do about Nilfgaard, and then she comes in and she's like, all we wanted, our only quarrel is with Cintra, just trying to like downplay what they're actually doing, and then Tissaia de Vries says offhand to her is like, how do we trust Nilfgaard? You dabble in things that you shouldn't. They apparently do all the forbidden magics. They do like necromancy, fire and magic, a couple of other ones that I don't remember.
Yeah, it just sort of stood out, I guess, to me more that necromancy came up, and I was like, oh, okay, necromancy.
Which is at least as far as the brotherhood of mages in the northern kingdoms that we are concerned with is forbidden magic, as they've decided. And then they go on to illustrate fire magic consuming the witches or the sorcerers and sorceresses that use it in the show, because they turn themselves like into flaming cannonballs or whatever they get thrown over. So
I just thought that was them using up their magic too hard, like that first girl that like fixed her. She like fixed something and then her hand shriveled up.
Oh, in the beginning when she was floating the rock or whatever.
Yeah, floating the rock.
I mean, it seems that way, but maybe the cost of fire magic is inherently too high.
Yeah. No, and that makes just the fact that it's fire, and fire can catch like a one match can catch like a whole forest on fire.
Right.
You know, like
it might be something poetic like that.
Yeah, it makes me think of it, you know, and even in Avatar, it was like that was one of the hardest bending out disciplines to learn, because it was so chaotic, you know, and just fire it's always portrayed as being kind of chaotic and
right. But then Yennefer does fire magic at the end of the show. We're not talking about the show right now. We're talking about the book.
Yeah.
But and so Ciri isn't doing magic in the game, and but and she does some sort of. She doesn't really do fire magic in the book. She
pulls from the energy.
She pulls the power from fire,
which almost seemed to me kind of like, doesn't she start the fire with magic?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, are you using your own magic for a magic source? I know she
right.
wasn't,
Yeah.
But in my
head,
it
sort of seemed. It was interesting to think about how they were justifying, or not justifying that, but explaining that, because I had to read over that paragraph a couple of times as well. It's like, so you can just start like a regular sized fire, which is like on like one stake, and then that provides like a really large amount of energy, which
and I think she had to use
fire
it
in itself
before.
is energy. We use fire as energy for things in the actual world.
Didn't she have to use it quickly before the fire was gone? Wasn't that also a thing?
Something like that. Because she was also in the middle of a fight with, what are they? They didn't name it in the book because they didn't name it, because it didn't seem to have a name. She had never seen it in anything in her studies, at least. But it was, it sounded like an antlion, which is a relatively common, mythical thing. Everything that it did sounds like an antlion does. So that's what I'm going to call as an antlion. She's like in the middle of fighting that and trying to save the unicorn. And so I guess that she was just pretty under a lot of pressure to begin with.
And she did pretty good for not like...
She managed to... I don't know if she killed the antlion, or was just able to get her and the unicorn away.
Yeah, and the unicorn is healed, even though it probably doesn't really like her that much right now.
Well, none of it was her. Well, it ends up leaving, but I think what happens in that sequence is that she faints finally. The unicorn is kind of stomping around her a little bit, or at least the tracks that are left around her indicate that, probably trying to figure out what to do. And then some elves show up.
And those guys probably scared it off?
Yeah, probably. Okay. I'm assuming they're elves. I don't know. We don't see, because they're just voices in her head. And they're just like, should we just finish her off? and they're like, no, but she's saved. And they name the unicorn is like this like ridiculously difficult F name. She saved the unicorn, so she's obviously, like a caring individual. She didn't have to save the unicorn, and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, let's just leave her to her fate then. And so they just take off. I assume they're elves. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know who else would know the name of a unicorn and be conflicted as to whether or not they should kill a human.
Yeah. I kind of liked the little bit of lore they gave behind this like juvenile unicorn, because it wasn't a fully grown unicorn, and the fact that it wasn't fully grown is kind of why Ciri was sort of thinking like maybe it came up to her because it didn't know necessarily any better. She's still technically a virgin maiden, which is what in the old tales or whatever they were
supposedly the criteria.
Yeah, to get one to come up and nuzzle you. But when they said that, like they'd put their head in your lap, I was like, what do they do with their horn? Like I just imagine them like sticking their whole, like a horse sticking its head in your lap, and it's just like, dude, your horn's right, poking me. But I'm just thinking about the unicorn now. Every time I think unicorn, I think bicorn, which I don't think is a thing, but like I feel
like I've heard unicorn. That before, but I don't know that. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. They used to call rhinos unicorns, I think.
I've heard that.
And I also heard some translation of the Bible had the term unicorn in it, and so people were like, there are unicorns in the Bible, and then other people are like, no, they used to call rhinos unicorns. So that's what and I was like, oh, okay, well, just take that for whatever you want it to be. But I guess just what I was saying is just I thought it was cool that this juvenile unicorn, like, it was so smart, like it was basically talking to Ciri, but like sort of through intuition, and literal, like Ciri was talking at it, and it seemed to understand what.
Well, it's a magical creature,
right?
It's not just like Roach, which is just literally a horse.
And it was just, I don't know, I liked it, and they were like a team. Like the horse needed Ciri's help to get the water too. Like it wasn't just the horse that came out of nowhere to save her. It was like the horse also needed her, and it just so happened to be some of the things that she had heard through, stories about unicorns, like of becoming, some of those things were true, and then other things were like, did they even ever see unicorns? Because
it's like everything else in this story or in this universe, where like, there's a fantastical view of things that, and certainly with unicorns having reached the point where they are thought to be extinct, at the very least, like nobody ever sees one anymore. So then what do you have to go off of except for the myth of decades and centuries past where people last saw a unicorn, so you come up with these tales or whatever. So, that's kind of how like everything goes. And Geralt's constantly like correcting people about monsters. Like, well, it takes virgin's blood or something, just some, classical kind of like idea of what, is about a monster. And Geralt's like, no, that's not true.
The worst part about like his plethora of knowledge is like, he's not going to write it down. Nobody else is going to get that except for like
his trade secrets.
Except for, I know, but it's like you think he'd write it down for the next line of Witchers. But I guess
they don't think that they're going to have anyone because I guess so. They don't know the process for creating a new Witcher. They don't know what the trials of grasses entails as far as preparation goes.
Man, you're right. So I wonder if Ciri can't become a Witcher.
Yeah, I don't think that she can. Unless part of what happens, because we still got 3 books to go. So part of what happens in the saga is they could potentially come across some source of materials, or a Witcher that had gone into being a hermit for the last century or something.
Yeah, that was presumed dead, or even a sorcerer that was presumed dead. That might know the old potions that they had to do to make him a mutant.
Right, something to that effect could happen. I don't think that it will, because I don't think that this is a story about Witcher salvation. I think it's just a story about 3 people coming together. Yeah, basically, that's the analogy that's being drawn here.
I don't think I said it in the show, but I like that the Dandelion is so involved with everybody. Like, he was almost like the cool uncle to Ciri when she fainted to try and like get to get out of having to pick between Geralt and Yennefer, and he came in and is like, hey, we all knew what you were doing, well, except Geralt, but like, the rest of us did. And it's just like, Geralt was like, I think there was this scene like, just it was just like kind of an off the cuff thing, like he was just sort of like kind of, I think he was self-deprecating himself, not the Witcher, Dandelion, about like how you like, why would, like, just about him being there, like, of course you're gonna say something. He's like, no, I'm happy you're here. Like, I like you. Yeah. We're cool. And I don't know, that's just, it's nice to their relationship. I have in my head is like they're best friends and he can't break them up, and then he's got his girlfriend Yennefer who they're going through rocky times, and then their kids.
That's definitely the way that I see it as well.
And it's a fun dynamic, even though it's not explicitly said that that's what it is, but obviously you felt the same way. So it's very cool that like it's so.
I love Dandelion. I think he's great.
Me too. Even in the show that we're not talking about, he's very cool. And man, I don't know what to think, because we left it on like a cliffhanger. Like all of them.
As we said, like I think that it's increasingly obvious that he knew this was going to be 5 books, and he's going to pace them out accordingly.
Yeah.
Without ever having to be like, well, might need to kind of tie this one up. It's like, no, this is a single story being told across 5 books, and it's going to take those 5 books to get anything done.
I'm already set up to write for next year. Like,
right. Yeah. So. And they're each only like 350 pages or something like that. So, they're also relatively short as far as your general book goes.
Yeah.
Usually a novel is about like 400 pages at a minimum, I think.
But yeah, I mean, you can feel that, like, obviously it's like the ball's still rolling, and I feel like whenever I'd like to do a final recap sort of episode on everything. I feel like we'll be able to build a sort of story arc as if it was one big book and be like, okay, so here's where everything really picked up, around. Right. It was all in book 1. Just stop after 1. Right. But I mean, we'll be able to say that after finishing, and I think it'll be nice to have a full ending to the story, as much as I like growing and learning all this new stuff, and how probably when we're done we'll be like, man, I wish I could like wipe my brain and do it again. Like, that's always fun. But it's almost it's satisfying and kind of like almost nostalgic, like after reading it or learning a lot of info about it and then going through it the second time and just getting all the extra details, like the part that I tell you I love all the time. I guess that's maybe what it is. It's kind of nostalgia and like going through it and getting the details, and it's this will be a good one for that. Oh man, even the show is like a good rewatch. Like, the books are a good reread. The full series, like, it's gonna be so long too, and there's so much lore that, like, I know I missed in that. Like, it'll be just so fun to.
It's really cool to see, to be able to like read this, and we're gonna be, assuming that we don't put personal pauses on reading the saga until the next season happens, which is going to be extremely impossible because the next season is not slated to air until 2021. But to have read all that we did, and then be able to just rewatch it on the show in a different version, which is something that I've done with like the Persona video games. Often get their own anime adaptations, which is a relatively easy transition because the cutscenes in the games are animated and it's all anime. But it's still it then is a retelling of the whole story, which obviously is not all anime. Otherwise, it would just be an anime. There's games and there's cutscenes and blah, blah, blah. And I would, every time I finished a Persona game, I then went and watched the animated adaptation. And it was like revisiting the story, but being able to see it in a different fashion, and that's super duper cool. And that's kind of what's happening with The Witcher. And then, obviously, that's kind of what happens anytime that you read a book series and then it gets adapted.
Yeah.
But this is a little bit more immediate.
And I'm surprised as to how, like, kind of good we guessed. Like, I feel like book 2 is sort of where we stopped kind of getting, like, any sort of semblance of, like, what was going on in, like, the show. Like, it just, it felt like maybe we'll be able to pull little details from book 3 and be like, oh, okay, I see why they did that in the show. But I just feel like the chunks that we read matched up so well with the show. Like, it's just like it was very good timing and just great to see like the 2 adaptations.
It did work out pretty well.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I think it's almost like we planned it to some degree, which obviously we didn't. It is interesting, and we'll talk about it when we talk about it on the show episode that we record after this that y'all listened to 2 days ago. But all they ever did was cover the prequels. They didn't, and then the 2 original stories of Yennefer's past and what Ciri had to go through from the sacking to meeting Geralt, which was not stuff that we ever saw in the prequels themselves, or either book actually that we've read. But
yeah, I'm excited for just like to keep going on with this book. I'm kind of excited to get a new story, a new series, under our belt, but not a new series, a new just story, a new chapter, and
just go somewhere else.
But it's definitely something that I know we're going to keep talking about and bringing up, and like on our recap episodes, that'll be fun just to hit up and just be
right. It's definitely one of those formative franchises that influences a lot of things, probably both within the subculture and then on personal levels as well. Even just as an example, it's for you is kind of where you saw how like kind of, or not even, this is like the original time that you saw it, but like we talked about a couple episodes where you were kind of had like the the dawning realization of how like a lot of classical story beats kind of happen.
Right.
Might have been something that you knew, but it came to the forefront of your mind. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's when I had the big
where you have the moment, you know, whether it was something that you understood, but you were able to put like a word to it, I suppose would be a way to describe it.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would have gotten there had we not talked about this book, because you and I were hashing out like how would we come up with this idea if we were going to write it as a book, which is just a fun thing for us to talk about, I think. And it's just when we were doing that, trying to come up with like what's
the process of getting there,
and then that's when I was like, oh, like it was all these other things that we talked about, because we had always talked about like the underdog story and all kinds of other things, and then just like when we were trying to rebuild the Witcher story, it was just like, oh, okay,
right,
and that might be one I want to re-listen to and just hear me go like, oh,
right, there's the moment,
got it.
But yeah, I think that it's a very formative franchise for reasons like that, where it will have influenced other things beyond even just it getting a game and then now a show, but it probably influenced other authors of the genre. But then it has an influence personally over its readers for various reasons. That just happens to be a reason that you had, and maybe a reason that somebody else also had, or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, I see why the cult following it had, why they why they pushed to make the game, you know, rather than like the author pushing just to have like, hey, turn my book into a game, or, you know, it's just, I definitely see why they have that draw and appeal to it. It's just, it's simple, yet with all the like complexity whenever you need it, and it leaves like enough out that you can kind of let your imagination take care of some of the holes, and if they end up changing, you know, what your imagination sort of created, it's like it's not that big a deal because they never really said it, so you can that's sort of how I guess I do it. But it'll be so the book felt very serious, so it'll be kind of interesting to hop into a new universe of like, you know, where are we going? Because like some of the choices I think we were looking at for maybe the next book, one of them had like monsters in it. I know we're not picking that one, but it's just, I don't know. It's gonna be hard to not compare it immediately to The Witcher 2. So,
it's probably along the lines of the same way that anybody reading another kind of like epic series felt going into whatever's next. Yeah. Because like what we've chosen next is kind of like another young adulty novel in the vein of Scythe. Yeah. Where it's going to be a little bit easier, a little bit more just like quick paced and fun, which is great. I love things like that. Me too. But I bet like it's not dissimilar to how people felt when they finished The Lord of the Rings the first time back in like the 30s. They're like, okay, well, what's next? This Sherlock Holmes novel, or whatever it was, and probably the same thing in the 90s. Whenever you finished one of the Song of Ice and Fire books, you're like, all right, well, time to. I guess I'm reading Harry Potter or whatever. Yeah. While Harry Potter is a very well-constructed young adult novel, as opposed to other ones that are not so well-constructed, it still is pretty simple.
Yeah. It's hard to find that addictive, good series. Like, that's why you and I talk so much about anime. It's like, hey, have you found this new good one that I'm into? It's like, oh, here, let me try it out. Oh, yeah, hell yeah. I'm so into that. And it's something captivating that, like, when we find something that shines so brightly like this, or, you know, My Hero Academia, just one of those things, and then we get to really dive into it. It's for the, you know, for lack of sounding corny, it's kind of special, you know. It's because it is a special thing.
Absolutely.
And they all have different levels of intensity. Like, obviously Lord of the Rings is way more adult and like than Harry Potter, but like in I don't even think Game of Thrones is more adult than it. It's just more like graphic, sexually.
Yeah, it's more modern, you know. The Lord of the Rings trilogy or series of books came out like in the 20s.
Yeah, and so it's very mature.
You wouldn't be able to write something like A Song of Ice and Fire back then. They would have been like, you're writing pornography.
Yeah, this is going somewhere that no one can read it.
Right? Put him in jail.
Yeah, put him in jail. But yeah, so I guess I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, you know, that this is the next, like that it'll be as captivating of a story, even if it is, you know, because it's also too kind of hard when we put ourselves in a bubble of like, we have to do something kind of all encompassing in a single story.
Right.
And just because it is there are so many series, it is kind of daunting to think like, all right, let's do this, and we can't just hop on and say like, let's read 3 books in a month at 1,500 pages. It's like, no, thank you. Mm-hmm. that's.
And then even if we weren't doing the show at all, it's hard to pick up any book.
Yeah, exactly.
Even with a multitude of good recommendations,
that potential
because that's
commitment.
A long time sink.
Exactly.
Even if it's only 150 pages, that's like 3.5, 4 hours worth of reading if you're a moderate or quick reader.
And that's such
picking
a
up
big
an
commitment.
anime is just like, well, a full season of 12 episodes at 22 minutes a piece after commercials is in general about 6 hours worth of viewing, because I've done it a few times. But it feels like you get a ton, to me, and this could be a totally personal interpretation, I feel like I can get a ton more out of 6 hours worth of watching anime, both just as a general experience, visually, if it's not a garbage one, that's 6 hours of just like, holy shit, this is all so good looking.
Yeah.
Narratively, hopefully, emotionally, if the characters are something that you can tie yourself to in any way. Where if you've got like a 400-page book, that's about that same amount of time of reading.
Right.
Probably maybe a little bit closer to like the 4.5 to 5 hours, unless it's a real slog. And you might not like it at the end.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing too, is I feel like even though it is a bigger commitment time-wise with anime, it doesn't feel... I don't know if I've ever...
Well, certainly depending on the show.
Yeah,
obviously, any case of one
case
book versus
case.
one show might be a completely different comparison. Yeah. But I think in general you can get more out of an equivalent time spent in, and not even just anime, but just like a show,
right?
Period, versus a book. And certainly whenever you're thinking about taking it on in your head, and you're like, is this the book I'm going to read this month?
Yeah, no, exactly. That potential of it only being okay and having that huge time sink where for some reason in my head, I can think like, I'll just binge this anime and I'll get it all. I don't know. Maybe that's the difference. Who knows?
Right.
But it's...
And certainly if you're watching an anime as it's being aired, or any show as it's being aired,
for sure,
that's 20 minutes a week, and that's all you can do. Or if you're watching on an actual television where you have to deal with commercials and so forth and so on, that could be, depending on the show, 30 minutes to an hour spent a week, and that's all you can do unless you let yourself fall behind and you have to pick up a couple of episodes. Whereas with like a book, it's all there for you.
Yeah.
And so, do I spend an hour reading tonight, an hour reading tomorrow? Do I read for 5 hours today? Or whatever it is that you're going to do? The time commitment is more ambiguous and less structured. Where for if you're watching The Office as it came down, it's like, all right, well, there's 30 minutes a week that I watch for the next 8 years.
8 years.
And that's just part of your running schedule. You can eat dinner while you're doing it. You can fold laundry or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's not a lot you can do while you're reading.
No.
If anything, it'll probably be nothing.
Yeah, short of maybe listening to the audiobook like I do. Like that's...
You can maybe eat dinner while you're eating.
Yeah.
If it's nothing complicated. If you have soup or just mashed potatoes, you could do that while reading.
Yeah.
You can't... It would be difficult to have chicken wings while you're eating or while you're reading, unless you don't care about the status of your Kindle or book.
Yeah.
So it's a dedicated time investment, and I think that that's a little bit more daunting to choose than it is to choose a new series of viewable content.
There's something too about it being a book that's almost like, in my mind, I guess, that might have a bit of like a negative connotation. Not that books are bad, obviously. I don't think that. It's just that maybe because it is lacking in some of the easy visual stuff, or maybe I don't...
On the surface level, it's not as engaging.
It might not be as engaging as quickly. Like some books grab you right off the bat, and some others don't necessarily. Like what did we just read? That was Stephen King's
The Institute.
That one grabbed me right away,
and
that was cool because when we were grabbing it, we're fans of King. We don't know if it'll be good or not, or if it'll take a while to get good. Like we assume it will end up being good, but that one just like it grabbed me, and I think you said so too. But it grabbed me like right at the beginning, and that was very satisfying right off the bat. That one I would argue is like if you start reading, it would feel just like a book, but for the same reason that we had just been talking about, I have way more friends that have picked up The Witcher by recommendation or Good Omens or another show that we've watched by recommendation than any of the books that I've recommended, just because of that same time sink factor.
But we're also very practiced readers who have read our whole lives pretty consistently.
Yeah.
There's maybe like a 5-year span where I was reading very little, but pretty consistently I've read a ton. And the investment of time and attention that it takes to get into any book, even if it, like the first paragraph kind of grabs you, the next paragraph might not. And you're like, oh, well, this is part of story time, blah, blah, blah. And so that ritual of going through a book is something that is just second nature to people who have read a ton at that point. And so that's not daunting in any way.
Right.
Whereas if you're just recommending something to somebody who maybe reads 2 books a year.
Definitely. And that's going to be their one book for those 6 months. And
it's a higher hurdle to jump over for, I would think, most people.
I know a lot
in
of
a
people
world
that
where
don't.
entertainment can be gotten through a multitude of visual stimuli and other things that are a little bit more conducive to going about your regular day.
Yeah, reading's not the easiest. I mean, reading literally is kind of easy once you've learned it, but making the time to read isn't.
That part is still difficult for me.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. No, I mean, I'm there too. Like even listening and doing it, amongst other things, like if I was doing laundry, like you said, even doing that is not the easiest. Sometimes I won't want to be super serious, and I'll just want to get silly, and I'll be catching up on my silly podcasts and stuff, and I won't want a serious listening thing or whatever.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
it is hard. It's weird saying reading's hard because on a base level, I feel like
the ritual of reading can be difficult.
Yeah.
Certainly in a modern society. Not that life wasn't difficult in the past, but there was
less to do.
There's less to do.
Just kidding.
I mean, that's what I was kind of getting at.
Yeah, but
at that time, the only kind of entertainment that there was storytelling, whether it was listening to somebody tell a story or reading a story. And I guess, playing different sorts of physical activity games, like fucking stick and hoop or whatever. But, now it's like, okay, well, I can entertain my brain while I do these other things that I have to do, like you have to fold laundry, you have to eat something, or you're gonna die, or you're gonna get fired from your job because you smell all the time because you didn't do your fucking laundry. But you can do those things while you're winding down from the day by watching, Parks and Rec,
watching The Witcher.
Yeah. But going back to kind of what put us on this tangent, that's why this series is so good. Is because it's something. Even it being a saga, it can be, like we've touched on already. It can be daunting to try and pick up a new book if it's a standalone book.
Oh yeah.
This being a saga is definitely like a little bit more difficult to recommend to people. To be like, hey, this is really good saga that we're reading, and it's 8 books of content. To someone who doesn't read, they might not be into that. But this being as good as it is makes it a little bit more easier to take on now, and now with us being at a point where now it's going to be taking on at a personal level of wanting to continue it because we're not doing it for the show anymore.
Yeah.
In the same way that Lord of the Rings is a great thing to recommend. The Harry Potter is a great series to recommend and enjoy multiple times. I know you've read and listened to Harry Potter like probably 100 times. I've read those books probably like 6 times.
Yeah.
And that's a 7-book commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the last 3 of which are 400 plus pages.
I would listen to that instead of music. Walking around campus at A&M. I would every semester. I'd go through those books at least once. And but yeah, I mean that ended up getting to the point where it was one of those things like do it. It's on all the time. It's on the background. It's It's like the background music to my life kind of.
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't think this next book will be super daunting just because we both, looked at the thing. It sounded kind of interesting. It's got a little bit of like a Rumpelstiltskin vibe from what we've heard and read about via Goodreads. And I forgot what it's called. The Silver or something. No.
Spinning Silver.
Spinning Silver. And it's by Naomi Watts?
Not Naomi Watts. Let me pull that up right quick on my Kindle.
Yeah, did you, had we looked at how many pages
Yes.
Okay.
It's about 460-ish pages. We're going to cut it across 3 weeks so that it's about 150 pages of reading, give or take, each week.
Naomi Novik.
Good. For this week, we're going to read the first 10 chapters. It's about 155 pages, depending on the edition that you have. Here on the Kindle, it looks like 155 pages of reading. Just through the first 10 chapters of our book, Spinning Silver.
Write that down. Through.
Seems like a cool, kind of young adult focused fantasy story. Evidently is a sort of retelling of the Rumpelstiltskin story.
Yeah, and it was nominated for the Hugo Awards this year. The author's been nominated several times for Hugo Awards. This book received a different award, I believe, the Nebula Award or something like. So it's a good author, good story from what everybody said. It should be good, so I'm looking forward to it too. But you guys know how to find us at ears_stamps on Instagram and Twitter, and then dogearsandtimestamps@gmail.com. And we'll be back to the one episode a week, I believe, until something else strikes our fancy, like a new show or something else. Yeah. And we're still waiting on our animes to finish until probably April or something like that. I think that's what we were saying. It'll be several months, but I
need to look and see what that expectancy is.
Keep up with those. Let us know if there's a new book or anime or something we need to check out. That would be great. I love recommendations, especially because we spent a good time talking about the recommendation. I'd love to take one, especially an anime. That'd be a lot of fun. I mean, we don't necessarily dive into anime so much for the show, except for just because we like talking about it. But It would be fun to hop onto a new one that maybe we hadn't heard of or something like that. So if you got recommendations, shoot them our way.
Yeah. Let us know what's happening. Petition the NFL to hire better officiators because the referees are pathetic. So that's all I have to say this week.
Is that on a signmypetition.com?
Right. I've started one. It's called Fuck the Referees. Whatever. I'm Will Hedrick.
I'm Jordan Schaffer.
This is Doggers and Timestamps. Go Texans, go Packers.